Hello, I am Tony Nunes. I am the host of this here podcast, and today we're talking Lord of the Rings, and we're asking the question, are the Lord of the Rings films Christmas films, holiday films? How do they stack up? Should they be placed in that pantheon? That's a question we're going to answer today on Box Office Culture. Lord of the Rings, that's what we're talking about today. And my guest today is Lee Metzger, Lord of the Rings expert.
No, but I am here. Hello, it's me, Lee again. I'm back. I'm on the show.
And he does know a little bit about Lord of the Rings. He's seen the movies.
I have. I just recently, actually, over the past couple of months, I watched the extended versions for the first time, which I didn't realize I hadn't seen yet. But once I did, I figured that out.
So today we're posing this question. Are Lord of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, can those classify as Christmas movies, holiday movies, a holiday tradition of viewing pleasures? It might seem like a weird question to some people, but this is something that is actually a tradition for many people to sit down and watch the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy during the holidays. I've done it for years, and I was really interested to find out that I'm not alone, and there's actually a lot of people doing this. And I thought about it, and I wondered, why? Is this a phenomenon that is kind of a Christmas holiday phenomenon, or is it something else? So we're going to talk about that today. And we're talking about that today because it is the holidays, and we're launching a Fellowship Film Festival here this week where we're showing all three original Lord of the Rings films, theatrical cuts, not those extended cuts that you just talked about, every week, starting tonight with Fellowship of the Ring.
Every Thursday
for the next 3 weeks on the big screen, which we'll talk about that and why that's kind of special too. But to kind of lay the landscape here, I wanted to start out quickly by talking about these Christmas movies or holiday movies that are outliers. They're not traditional holiday and Christmas movies, like Die Hard.
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is Die Hard.
Die Hard's the biggest one because there's always been this argument, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Die Hard is considered a Christmas movie because it takes place around the holidays and it incorporates little Christmassy flares and decorations and things like that throughout the movie. It kind of plays and has fun with the timing that the film is set.
Well, should we talk about, like, what are the parameters of how a Christmas or a holiday movie is like, what they have to play by, what the rules they have to play by?
I think,
like, is it merely like if it takes place during the Christmas or the holiday season, does that constitute it? Is that the only parameter it needs to fulfill?
I don't think there are rules. And I think that's kind of part of the discussion too. Is there are no rules?
Ain't no rules.
Ain't no rules.
This is a movie. I won't do it.
Don't do it.
Air Bud.
No, God, Air Bud isn't there. There's a Christmas Air Bud movie. We're not talking about that today. Talk about Lord of the Rings.
Santa Paws, Search for Santa Paws, Search for Santa Paws.
Here we go. Yes.
Santa Buddies.
Okay, so anyway. Die Hard and movies like that are Christmas adjacent. Even Gremlins. Gremlins is this really fun early 80s horror comedy from Joe Dante that is set at Christmas. But Christmas becomes part of the story and centerpiece. I don't know. I guess the definition of a Christmas movie is hard because if a movie is set during Christmas, is it therefore a Christmas movie? That's the big question. Or
because if that's the only parameter, then it's a pretty quick conversation.
It is. Or to be a Christmas movie, technically, does it have to be set around Christmas? And does the theme of the film have to center around the Christmas holiday and season and spirit itself? Like the Grinch.
Like this, does part of the plot have to revolve around finding the true meaning of Christmas?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, Christmas as a time, there's a lot of movies like this. Batman Returns
Mm.
is another one set during the holidays. It's a fun one to watch around the holidays. The Hawkeye series,
super
you
good.
know, on Disney Plus, set during the holidays. So they're fun to watch. Die Hard is the same thing. It's fun to watch around the holidays and say it's a Christmas movie. Is it technically a Christmas movie? Let us know in the comments, because there is no answer, and we're not setting out to answer that question. What we're setting out to answer today, though, is, do the Lord of the Rings films fit into that very unspecific?
Do they satisfy some of the parameters?
Yeah, the criteria of a holiday / Christmas film. So we're going to go through some of those points.
Great.
Let's start out first by talking about why the month of December in particular is really good for a Lord of the Rings rewatch. There's some history there, but there's also little flares in the story itself of Lord of the Rings that, you know, Tolkien put in there that makes it a good fit. But let's start out with timing. So these movies were all released around Christmas time theatrically. The first one in 2001, second one in 2002, third one in 2003, but all in December. So I think historically, anybody who remembers going to the theater to see this, and it was a huge deal because they're amazing movies, and each one was more monumental and exciting than the next. And that monumental excitement happened around the holidays because these were released in December. So I think nostalgia-wise, some people have this fondness and kind of core memory association with Lord of the Rings and Christmas because of the times that they first saw these films in theaters. So that's a part of it. But that would mean, if that's a classification for what makes a holiday film, that would mean every single film ever released in the month of December is therefore a Christmas film, and we know that's not true.
Napoleon,
great Christmas classic. But that's one part of the timing element of this conversation. The timing of the film itself. In the Fellowship of the Rings, the characters set out from Rivendell on what Tolkien describes as a cold, gray day near the end of December. I mean, that sounds like it's pretty close to Christmas. So if the setting to start out this journey is that time of year, then maybe you could argue, yes, this is a film set around the Christmas time or the time where Christmas is. But this is a fantasy film. Does Christmas, the idea of Christmas as a holiday, even exist? Or are we crossing our fantasies here?
Well, it does. In Middle Earth, there's a holiday called the Yule, which obviously a lot of the lore, the extended lore in Middle Earth mythology is brought from Scandinavian history or European history, and one of those things that was brought over was this idea of a holiday, an end of the year holiday. And then in the world of Middle Earth, that is called the Yule, and there are similar traditions and stuff. It starts kind of, the harvest is in the fall, and then into the colder months of the Yule.
I've even read something that in an appendix that Tolkien wrote for this opening, leaving to go on this quest, he does say somewhere in an appendix, and I'm not a Tolkien scholar, so I don't know. I can't say for sure, but he does say December 25th is the day. I've read that somewhere, but I read it on the internet, so take it with a grain of salt.
Could have been on Reddit. Who knows?
It could have been on Reddit. But yeah, I think the timing of these films, the time and the length, the time of the films itself lend themselves nicely to the holiday season because we're all finding ourselves on holiday breaks from work. Kids, if you have kids, are out of school. You're looking for things to do, things to watch. And part of that tradition, as we settle in and hibernate for the winter over the Christmas break, is, putting these on, whether it's background while you're decorating your tree, or you're sitting down and just really delving into them and watching them. You can watch all three movies. I think all three movies theatrical release are 9 hours, or you watch the extended cuts, like you said, and that's 12 hours right there. And it's hard to find that time throughout the year.
I think there's something that's also happening in the background where the people who are in the ruling class of nerddom are in their 30s, their 40s, younger 50s, and those people are the people who hold the traditions now. It's their own traditions. So I was 13 when Return of the King came out. You were probably, I don't know, 17, 18, somewhere around there. And people our age are now creating their own Christmas and holiday traditions when all of these people are home. And I know that my parents, when we're all together, will put on It's a Wonderful Life.
Mm-hmm.
They'll put on White Christmas. They'll put on these movies from days of yesteryear.
Unquestionable Christmas classics, because
Yes.
they are about the holiday of Christmas itself.
Mm-hmm. And those were important to their parents to watch. And now, so when we are becoming the people who are creating the traditions for the next generation and the children of our generation, it has become, these are the things that we attribute to the holiday season.
There is this deep sense of nostalgia for people our age, people in their 30s, their 40s, that maybe is deeper than other generations have had. I don't know why that phenomenon exists, but it does. So I do think that finding those traditions, like you say, is really important to people our age, and Lord of the Rings is the perfect one. And we all remember going to these packed theaters.
Oh, yeah.
And, the enthusiasm and excitement of every, it's almost like the Star Wars opening crawl. Lord of the Rings trilogy, the original trilogy here that we're talking about, is like the Star Wars trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I think those two trilogies of any film series are, in my opinion, at least, kind of the most important, big theatrical cultural moments.
Yeah.
And then Harry Potter, you can add in there a little bit too as well.
I can still remember the openings to all three of the Lord of the Rings trilogies, with the first one of the Galadriel telling retelling the story of the ring with Isildur and Sauron, and then him getting shot off his horse and falling into the river. And then with Two Towers, with Gandalf falling through the caverns of Moria, and then into the lake, and then in the highest dungeon, or in the highest tower, in the lowest dungeon, and then in return with Smeagol choking out his brother.
Yeah,
those are burned in the minds of millennials.
That opening scene too, in The Return of the King, which is the flashback scene to how Smeagol becomes Gollum and becomes obsessed with the ring and the ring's power. That is very much within the spirit of some of the Christmas movies we know, like The Grinch, which is about Christmas not being about, you can't buy Christmas at the store. It's about materialism and all of that, that doesn't come from a store mentality. But, if you're looking for a movie that's going to talk about the downside of obsessing over material possessions,
where else
look no further than The Ring. The Grinch has this line, "You're a monster, Mr. Grinch. Your heart's an empty hole." But the opening monologue from Gollum, crossing back and forth between the Smeagol Gollum role, which that scene too is that's a masterful scene, and Andy Serkis's performance is kind of second to none there. But he's talking about losing himself and forgetting his own name and all of this to this power of this ring. So when you're looking at themes of Christmas movies, I mean the material possession and obsession with materialism around the holidays as a theme, this one, I mean, it fits.
Another check mark.
But I think for me, the timing thing, the nostalgia of when this comes out is what lends itself to be a Christmas adjacent, holiday adjacent tradition to watch these films. But there's also the fact that these movies star a great deal of elves. There's so many elves. no shelves.
Oh.
There's lots of elves, and elves are not the small little people that are depicted in the
Keeblers.
the Santa films and things like that. Those are the hobbits here.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a wise old jovial man with a white beard
Interesting.
named Gandalf.
Mm-hmm.
And Gandalf is kind of,
and he shows up the first time we see Gandalf in the Fellowship. He has a wagon full of toys and
firecrackers, and the kids are delighted.
Yep.
Oh my God, it's Gandalf.
Mm-hmm. And he only comes around very rarely, but whenever he does, he's met with joy.
Exactly. Yep. And
jovial receptions.
Mm-hmm. And he spends the entire film trying to make sure that this possession gets to its rightful place, like Santa does with all of his presents.
True.
Might be a reach.
That's a bit of a reach.
Little bit of a reach, but
you found it halfway through that sentence.
I did find it. But I think, there's little things like that. You can joke and you can be like, there's elves, there's a gray bearded man. All of these things make The Hobbit, or not The Hobbit. We're not talking about the Hobbit movies here. And that's a future discussion as well. But the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the original trilogy, yeah. You could make little jokes like that and say, this is why it's a Christmas movie or a holiday movie. But really, I think deep down, it's the nostalgia of when they came out, and it's one of the best communal viewing experiences you can have with friends and loved ones, to sit down and watch these films, because they're long, they're really well made, and it's a timeless story. And at its core and heart, it's a simple story, a simple moral tale. And really, what's better than that at the holidays?
I think the thing that sets holiday movies apart is that it is something that you want to share with the people that you love. So you put on things, you want to enjoy experiences that remind you of your childhood and that you want to share with the people who are maybe going through their childhood. So it's these like I love putting on like Young Frankenstein or Airplane, these movies that are important to me, or Air Bud, no, all jokes aside, like putting on these movies that are nostalgic and they're close to your heart and they mean something to you. And here is a moment that is designed for families and designed for people, like spending time with people who you love and who are closest to you. And I think that's what makes a holiday movie. It doesn't necessarily need to take place during the holidays or even come out during the holidays, but it has to mean something to you.
Yeah, it has to be full of human soul and some magic as well.
And a little bit of magic.
I think a little bit of magic goes a long way in these movies. So we want to know what you think. Do you think Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy, is a Christmas movie, a holiday movie? Does it fit? Is it like Die Hard? Should this be a new Christmas tradition? We sure hope it is here, and hopefully this is something we can do every year, is show this trilogy and have this discussion again and again and again.
Well, the almost sold out show tonight of the Fellowship of the Ring makes me think that it definitely is.
Yeah. So let us know, comment. We would love to know what people think of this, or are we just crazy? I don't think we're crazy.
We might be a little.
Maybe. All right. Thank you for listening to Box Office Culture. Lee, thank you for joining me again.
My pleasure. I'm not coming back.
Box Office Culture is produced on the United Theater Podcast Network. It is produced and edited by Mr. Lee Metzger. And I am your host, Tony Nunes. Until next week.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the United Theater Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And if you could take a moment to leave a review, we'd greatly appreciate it. Your feedback helps us create content that you love. So hit that subscribe button and leave us a review, and we'll see you on the next episode.